Hi, folks. Welcome to That Photo Feeling. I'm your host, Andy McSweeney. How do you feel about your photography? Good to great to awesome, I hope, or at least on its way there. And maybe this episode will help if you're still climbing the ladder. That's because I talked to noted Belgian photographer Bart Heirweg on this fine episode. He is the man as far as it goes with landscape photography workshop instruction, either through his workshops tours in Belgium and beyond, as well as being a Nikon Ambassador, speaker, and author on so many things in the landscape photography scene. So we talk about that, as well as his development and history with the camera as he's been developing out over the last decade or so. And yeah, what can I say, boys and girls? I think it was a pretty good chit chat. We went all over the place. As I noted in the episode towards the end, I was a little extra distracted that particular week of the recording with a bunch of Fujifilm testing. So yeah, we bounce around a little extra, and maybe we talk over each other a little bit more than usual, even for a Skype recording. But I'm happy to say it was still a good interview, and that's also what the power of the edit is for. There's a little muting here and there, so we keep it minimal. And you'll notice that if you're watching this on the video version over at youtube.com/Andy McPhoto. And if you're over on the audio side of things, I think it just helps the groove move forward on this chat with Bart. So why don't we get to it? Stay tuned at the end of the episode if you want to hear me babble a little bit more, especially for the future of where this podcast is going, because as some of you know, we have just rebranded from being This Photo Life into That Photo Feeling. So a little bit of housekeeping as well as some photo thoughts overall after this great chat with Bart, which we are going to get to right now. I got to work on my short intros when guests are in the house. So let's get to it, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy, or as the Flemish say, geniet ervan. Did you grow up here?
Yeah, I actually grew up in the area of Oudenaarde. I've been living here yeah, for my whole life. I usually when I was young, until I think 7 or 8 years, we lived in, yeah, I wouldn't say the city, but yeah, the suburbs of the city. So it was still quite a lot of houses. And then at the age of 6 or 7, maybe 8, my parents moved to the Flemish Ardennes, so on the countryside. They had bought a piece of land there, and then built their own house with the help of my grandfather. And then so we moved to the countryside when I was, I think, about 8. I was going to the third grade. Do you say third grade?
Third grade,
I mean,
inderdaad, yeah.
yeah. So yeah, actually, my roots are in the Flemish Ardennes, I think, yeah, more or less. Yeah. That's
Cool.
where I grew up, and you build camps in the forests, and yeah, you play around on the countryside and collecting stuff. I was already interested in nature at that age, and so collecting beetles and bugs and butterflies, and yeah, so that's how everything started. So I consider my roots as being in the Flemish Ardennes, and that's especially that area nurtured my interest in nature and biology
Cool.
and landscape.
And photography? Were you already picking up a camera at that point in a
Mm,
serious way?
well, no, not in a serious way. I found images of photos in the photo book of my parents, which I made at, I think, the age of 12, 13, with a camera from my dad. And there were some images or photos from lizards and butterflies. I think they had to be made on a holiday in France, I think, on a vacation in France. But I actually didn't remember me taking these photos. So
You didn't have that intent and interest and excitement yet.
yeah, well, I had the interest and excitement in nature, but not really in photography. Photography is something I picked up at the age of 20, I think. Yeah.
Ah, tell me about that.
Yeah, that was because I was interested in nature a lot. I was a very avid, still am, but then even even more, yeah, more avid. How do you say it? Even, yeah, it was like I was traveling the whole of Belgium to see specific species of butterflies, dragonflies, birds. So it was actually the sightings that counted. So just to see as many as possible and as rare as possible. Yeah. So they call it twitching in Belgium. So twitching means you just travel a lot of distance to see a bird or a species. So that's what I did for quite a few years, and I'm still a bird watcher. I don't drive around the whole country to watch birds, but nowadays, I still watch birds. So when I'm out photographing, I usually have my binoculars with me, and from time to time I photograph some birds too. But the photography came at the point that I started to record I wanted to record what I was seeing. So those rare species, I wanted to record them. Just it was very simple, just a record shot. But then, I suddenly involved into photography more and more, and at some point the observation part got less and the photography part got bigger, and then the transition that moved on to let's say photography for most of the time. But I still like observing nature too, and sometimes if I want to reconnect with nature and
reset.
How do you call it? Distress, yes. Yeah. And then I just leave camera behind and just take my binoculars and go for a walk and just watch bird and other stuff. So,
good.
Because photography also creates a kind of stress to having to, not always, but you have the feeling that you have to deliver, and sometimes that can be a bit overwhelming and can be stressy. And actually it should also be something. Nature should also be something to de-stress. So it's difficult to find the balance, and that's why sometimes I'll leave the equipment behind and just go for a walk.
For sure, man. For sure. And you're preaching to the choir, like we say in English on that one. I'm a big believer, and I've talked about it and even talked to people on the show more than a little bit about the therapy of photography. You got to step back sometimes. And I think it's actually better for your photography if you're not always obsessing about the frame, aperture, shutter speeds, full frame, crop, or da. I mean, I'm a gearhead, but you also have to enjoy life. Just to ask, where did that transition? You say how it transitioned into photography. Was there one defining moment, or do you think it sort of happened over phases?
Yeah, it went over time, but I consider 2004, 2005 as the year where my shift went to photography. Yeah, so I was already doing photography, but I was also doing a lot of observation. But I realized, when looking back, I realized that was about the time when I didn't photograph birds just to have a record shot, but I started using heights and trying to get closer to wildlife. So that was actually more from the point of view to get better shots and to get closer shots and paying attention to light. So that's when I started shifting towards photography and also to the artistic part of photography, even though my pictures back then weren't that good.
We all say that. Don't even try.
It is because I went for a few workshops. I went back into my archive just to show how I portrayed like a bird or an insect 10 years ago or 50 years ago, and then how I would do it now, and just to show people the transition you can make and the steps in between. And I did that for a workshop recently, so I know that now that those pictures, if you look back at them, they were no good, but yeah.
But
you consider them good at that point.
Yeah, exactly. It's all evolution and progress. I don't know how deeply you looked into my tour site, but I end up instructing people, advising them, being a photo mentor, therapist, buddy, whatever level it is. So this all resonates, man. It's all a progression, and sometimes we beat ourselves up too. And when we look back at that stuff, going, Jesus, I can't believe I wasted even 1 and 0 on that, much less 16 megapixels of it, or 6 when you're starting early.
I started at 3 megapixels.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, and with a 64 megabyte compact flash card, so that doesn't fit even one raw file of my current camera. It was Nikon Coolpix. It was like a camera that could twist, and it was good for close up, for macro shots.
Of course.
But I could also use a sort of adapter and mount it on my telescope to observe birds, so I could photograph birds through my telescope. So you had an enhanced telephoto lens. The quality was wasn't too good because it was very
shaky. The stabilization
very
was still under
shaky
progress.
and
Sure.
not a lot of light. But yeah, just to have a record shot was good enough. So that's how I actually started out. So
Cool.
Nikon Coolpix.
Cool. So is Nikon even in those early days? Same for me too. I have a couple of years on you maybe. We haven't compared numbers, but I started on film on Nikon. I dallied a little bit, and when I came back to photography after 7 years in chasing DJ life, it was Nikon again. And we'll get to
Yeah.
that. You're a Nikon ambassador, so I'm sure we can sing that
I
song.
have an analog history too, but yeah,
Tell me a little bit about it, please.
yeah. I think it was some kind of F30 or something. Definitely not a professional camera. I think I bought it with a kit lens and then sort of tele zoom lens, 70-300, so the typical zoom lenses. So I tried photographing birds with that thing. That was even before the digital camera, but yeah, there were just analog shots and record shots of the things I encountered on my trips.
Yeah.
So it was not really photography yet. It was just playing around,
Yeah.
just auto settings and not paying attention to composition.
The early days of childhood sort of thing,
Yeah,
where you
yeah.
didn't have to
So
worry about all that stuff. Awesome. Awesome. So when did you get I mean just to put together the timeline, it's also something that I can't find about you. I want people to hear a little bit your story. When did the big DSLR start coming into your life?
in 2004. Yeah,
So
then
that same
I
year.
had a Canon. Yeah, so so I started out with if I also counted the Nikon analog camera. I think I bought that one in 1998,
Uh-huh.
and then played around it for 2 years. I think around 2001 was the first the Coolpix, the digital camera,
Yeah.
I think. And then in 2004, I switched to Canon and I bought a Canon 300D. So that
Okay.
was one of the first mirrorless
Digital
digital mirror
reflexes.
camera.
It's
Yeah,
all good.
reflex.
You're
Yeah,
talking another language, man, and you're doing great. It's all good.
yeah.
It's all cool.
Yeah, I have been on Canon or I was on Canon for a few years. I think until 2012.
Yep.
And then Nikon launched the D800, and I was completely into landscapes by then. And then, yeah, that was the dream camera for a landscape photographer. So then, then I switched to Nikon in 2012. So I've been on Nikon since then.
Right on. I have a D800. It served me for almost 7 years now, and that
Yeah,
was a beautiful
that
release.
was a revolution at that time because I was shooting with a 5D Mark II,
Also a solid camera. Yeah.
a good camera. But then they launched a 5D Mark III, and actually it was just a minor update. And then Nikon had the D800, the D800, and then also I was shooting quite a lot of wide angle at that time. So the 14-24 was just like a beast lens because I
Yeah.
was 16-35 of Canon, but to be honest, that wasn't the best lens, especially in corner sharpness wasn't great. So there was the H8, the 800, and then the 14-24, and that more or less made me want to switch to Nikon.
Right on. And I believe every brand has its pros and cons. I'm just going to say that at the beginning before we continue any of this discussion, because you know in photography how it gets. But having said that disclaimer, I have always found, and I'm a wide angle shooter, that Nikon handles wide angle a little bit better. We could have discussions about 20 things on all the cameras, but I've always noticed, even in the early days, they handle the corners of a wide angle just a little bit better than others do. Canon, I think, has come better with it, especially now with their mirrorless range, to give them credit. But Nikon's always done it, and that
Yeah,
14-24 is a dream
yeah.
lens.
Well, I don't have it anymore because it's also a big and heavy lens and difficult to use with filters. So I actually used my 16-35 from Nikon much more in the end. I don't use a wide angle that often anymore, but I switched to mirrorless. So now it's the 14-30 Z lens.
Yep.
So I use that now, and it's just this is a small lens. It's very easy to use filters, which was difficult on the 40 to 24. And
Of course, it
so
doesn't have that bulb like the
yeah, so you
1424
have to use
does.
those bulky big filters, and there's also extra equipment that you have to carry, and then you had a filter set especially for that lens, and then another filter set for all the other lenses. So yeah, it's not. So I sold a lot of my equipment and just narrowed down my kit to the most essential.
Good.
Uh,
Good.
yeah.
That's another stage in the progress too. You kind of go through this expansion of gear, the whole gas syndrome, and then I think if you do it right, it starts contracting down, whether you're changing systems or not, and you go like, I'm good with like 3 lenses, and one of them's a
Yeah,
prime, you
that's
know.
what I have: 4 lenses and 2 cameras, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, then you can focus on the practical side around the photo, or around the gear. You know, framing, mood, emotion, technical things obviously come into it, but just even the practical life, and mirrorless is a big benefit here, of smaller and lighter to be able to move
Yeah,
around.
that's also something that is becoming more important to me. Is I have a little bit of trouble with my back, and also I carry 2 drones, and yeah, just it has to be able. I have to be able to carry everything because
Yeah, you can't afford a Sherpa right now.
no. Well, I wouldn't want the Sherpa anyway. I prefer to be on my own in nature. I've gotten the offer of several people that they want to join me to carry equipment, but
Of course.
it's not to offend them. But I just if I want to go out and I'm not doing workshops or photo tours. If I go out, I usually want to be alone because it's that time that you're the most creative. And yeah, if someone is around you, it's just it's usually it's counterproductive for me. I'm better
Yeah.
when I'm alone because then I don't have to pay attention. Maybe he wants to go, or maybe he wants to wait while I want to go, and yeah, just you're on your own and you do your own thing. And if you want to do nothing, then you do nothing. If you want to wait for 5 hours to get some light, you wait for 5 hours. So you don't have to, yeah, that you have to pay attention to, or so that's I prefer to shoot alone. At least when I'm shooting for my own agenda, for my own work.
Yeah, yeah. This goes back to the sort of phototherapy and zen of it all. I think with landscape photography in particular, and nature goes triple points. There is a big meditation to doing photography just with nobody around, having your own time. It's one of the times also I like a tripod. I'm not the biggest fan of a tripod for that practical side more than anything, but I'm happy to just spend an extra 20 minutes setting up a shot and doing extra stuff
Uh,
around those 2, 3 that I might take out of the scene. It's you must know this from shooting in busier places. I was in Bruges. I was at the Rose and Hood Guy. I'm testing out a bunch of Fujifilm gear right now, so I'm just set up with the tripod, running through apertures, whatever. I turn around, and never mind, it's a pandemic. There's a guy right behind me.
yeah,
He's just looking in and waiting to start the stop and chat of blah blah blah. This lens and that lens and what are you doing? La, 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 la. Oh, you're from Canada, and I'm just like oh,
yeah.
you broke my zen. I was just running through aperture numbers, click click click, and then I look over.
No, once in Iceland, it was before the pandemic. Once it was in Iceland, I had or was it, or maybe it wasn't. I think it was in Canada actually, in Banff Jasper National Park, which is quite busy, and there are a lot of Asian people there. And then there was just like a guy putting his camera on my shoulder to get the exact same shot. So he was using my shoulder as so I had this hat next to me and then the camera on my shoulder just to get the same shot. Yeah. So that's when everybody was getting too close. Yeah.
Oh, that's a little bit much.
Yeah.
It's the first time
Yeah.
I've heard that. Awesome. So do you take? I mean, well, I could talk about that for another 5 minutes on Crazy World with Cameron people, but man, uh, you know, um, it's also a vein of photography. I think is interesting when you start teaching and when it starts becoming a part of the work. Any level in between that, just when it's a very serious thing. How you're running your workshops in normal times, of course, your workshops, your tours, you're also an author, you do online lectures, offline lectures in the real world. How often do you think you get time for your own photography? And when you're going out there, like, I guess to sort of balance between the zen and the gear, what are you thinking on gear? Is it even 3, 4 lenses? Is it everything to cover? What's your mindset for you and
If
for
I
your
take,
photography?
so your first question is how much time do I get for myself, and then the
Yeah.
other question is what do I take with me
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think I get too little time for myself. If it's in normal years, I had a lot of time last year because of you know everybody knows because of what. So and I actually realized that that time was very valuable to me. I've been working on a new book which will be released in October. So I had a lot of time. I went to Wallonia almost every week for a few days. I have a modified Volkswagen van where I can sleep and just I have like my own little house with me and then just equipment, so drones and cameras and
Beautiful.
I'm just off in nature and I really appreciated that time that me time. So that was just discovering new places and shooting. So and I realized that I have to yeah keep I have to in the future I have to make sure that I have enough time for myself to keep on doing it, because that's actually why I started doing this job and this life. So it's important because if you're busy in workshops and doing a lot of in running your business, this gets in a way, or it gets in how do you say it, so it prevents you from being creative.
It gets in the way of your
Because you're
creativity. You
yeah
almost
it
had
gets
it. Yep. Yep.
yeah. So I find it difficult to find the balance between running a business that is going well and being creative. Because if my business is doing well, I'm earning a lot of money, but then I'm also busy with emails, with
The
stuff like that,
practical
even when I'm
side.
out in the field. So I'm still doing emails and thinking about possibilities, even when I have some time to go out in the field, while my business is a little bit slower or calmer. And then I go out in the field, it just opens up or it allows me to be more creative, to empty my head and to focus on the photography. So it's always difficult to find a balance, and you have to run business because it's also your income. So
It's part of the art.
it's not easy
Yeah.
to find a balance between. But it's definitely but it was already on
Oh,
from
sorry.
before.
Sorry. That cut up. Would you say that again, please?
So the process of finding more time for myself was already going on inside of me before the crisis hit. So I was doing a lot of photo tours too the past years, and I just had become too much. I was doing 7, 8 photo tours, and then
And
maybe
how long a week?
excuse me.
Sorry to interrupt. 7, 8 a week or 7, 8 a month?
No, 7 or 8 tours. I mean like photo tours, but not 1 or 2 workshops, but like 1 or 2 weeks in abroad and
Sorry.
so
My
so I
apologies.
have the workshops and the photo tours. So the photo tours are actually that there are multiple days on a location somewhere outside of Belgium. So that's what I consider a photo tour. So I was doing photo tours in Iceland, Canada, Greenland, so a lot of locations, Tuscany, France. But then, there were 7 or 8 trips a year, and then also 30 workshops a year. So it was just a little bit too much. And
That's a lot.
I realized I also have my daughter. So this is almost 3 years. So
Yeah.
there was a lot of things going on, making me realize that I want more time for myself, being more time at home, and finding my roots more or less back again, something like that. So that's why I want to do less trips, when it's going to be allowed again. Let's say in next year, I won't be doing 8 trips a year anymore. It's just too much, and I wanted to keep it a little bit less and allow more time for my own creative self, something like that.
You want to enjoy life a little more, as you
Yeah,
should,
more or less.
man. As you should. That's
But
part of
also,
life.
it's part of life. But you have a business running. But
Yeah.
while in the beginning running your business is more difficult now. I wouldn't use the word established, but I'm a little bit more established, so it's a little bit more comfortable. So you have a little bit more room to play and to just say no to certain work, because you don't have to do everything anymore, because you have still income
and you've done your work. This is the benefit time of having laid that foundation. And well, then, go on with the equipment, maybe.
I was just going to answer that question. The equipment. So usually I do fly drones a lot. So I have one big drone and a smaller drone that usually comes with me. I don't always carry them in the field. The small one is possible to be put in my camera bag, but the big one is just a huge drone. So if you want to fly that drone, your car has to be close, because you don't want to. It's the drone itself is 4 or 5 kilos, and then that's big. So I can't walk around for 10 kilometers with that bag and also a camera bag. So
especially if it's your time.
So I usually decide either am I going to fly the drone, or am I going to do just a land-based photography, if I would describe it. So just normal photography. And then it's just a Nikon D850 with an 80-400 lens, the 80-400 telezoom.
That's a nice lens. Good choice.
So that combination, I usually use that combination for detailed landscape details and maybe a bird or some wildlife. And then I have the Z7 with the 24-70.
24-70.
24-70. And then the 14-30, and maybe a macro lens depending on the season.
That makes
so
sense.
For now, like spring is starting, so I have the macro lens, the the 14-30, the 24-70, and then the 80-400. So that's 4 lenses if I carry everything. But usually it's only 3. Like in winter, it's just the 3 lenses. That I don't need a macro lens in winter. So, and I shoot most of my work with the 80-400 and the 24-70. I use the wide angle 10-30 from time to time, but that's only a small part of my work. So I used to shoot wider, in the beginning of my career.
I've noticed that on some of your earlier works, especially
more shooting details and close-up landscapes. I don't shoot wide landscapes that often anymore. Depends, of course, on location, but I can see that too. I did the test for myself and just going to my Lightroom library and then just filtering the lenses you use and looking at the amount of pictures you took with them. It's just, it's a curve that is going down. I was shooting a lot of wide angle in the beginning. Now it's more my standard and my telezoom I use for the moment. I think it's, I've heard that this is an evolution that a lot of photographers go to.
I was just going to say I'm at a turning point.
Your view is just narrowing down to the essentials in the landscape, I think, and I think it's just a natural process by a lot of photographers just go through.
I think so. Well, I think there's a double appeal to the wide angle. First off, I mean, you can drink everything in. I didn't think that because you were just drinking water. You get that nice whoosh and you have the option of putting everything in, or, getting a little bit low and kind of bringing out some drama, let's say in the foreground for an example. But I think also, personally, I find let's say full frame numbers, let's go with the new one, the 14-30. I think that's an easier lens to use for autofocus, for kind of framing overall, except at the extreme of the wide, than it is with a 24-70. And certainly when you start getting to the extremes of telephoto, they generally react better. I'm starting to use more my 24-70 overall, and just at 70 millimeters, I find I have to be more precise, especially since I also do people and moving things. Landscapes is a little easier. But do you find it's that way too? Do you think that might be part of the process of where you sort of move away from wide, especially with landscapes? I mean, so many of us think landscape and go, oh, wide, wide, wide. And when people come to Brugge for a tour, I tell them, like, bring a wide angle. We have some tight streets and you're probably going to want some extra. But I find over time, at least for me, I'm moving more to the tighter end of things just because my skill is progressing. I'm getting a little bored in the wide angle, especially being a wide angle junkie. I mean, I have a 15 millimeter Distagon Zeiss just for those special moments, commercially, but also personally. You know, I mean, hey, I love to nerd too. But at the end of the day, there's something I think that evolves away from your native focal length, if you will, on the creative side, and also just technically you're getting better, so you can start handling sort of more demanding focal lengths. Would you agree?
That's
Please, if you don't, tell me. It's all good.
no. Well, I think for myself personally, I think it's more my view on landscapes that has changed. Not, I wouldn't consider it to be um, the the technical skills that are better now
Oh,
that me
sorry to
choose
interrupt. I wouldn't limit it to technical either. I think creatively also you're starting to narrow in on your view, like you said earlier. But
yeah,
please
I think
continue. Continue. I wasn't clear
that's
there,
my
I
main
think.
reason at least. Yeah. And while yeah, in the beginning, and that's I got that question a lot. I'll just email. I want to do some more landscapes. And what wide angle do I need to buy? And I usually return or reply, what lenses do you own? Because if you don't have a telezoom lens yet, I would first put money in that telezoom lens, and maybe afterwards consider a wide angle, because you will open up a lot more options with a standard lens. Like a 70-200 would be perfect too. I use a 400 millimeter 80-400 because it broadens my range a little bit more. But even a 70-200 is also fine, and yeah, that there's a lot more possibilities, I think, than adding a wide angle to your equipment, because wide angle is just wide angle, and especially in Belgium, yeah, I don't think there are that many places where you just can shoot all in, because it's, yeah, usually there's a lot of distracting elements. Oh, maybe Bruges is a little bit different, because you have those narrow streets and you also have those views where I remember using a wide angle in Bruges too. So that's maybe an exception. But if you're just running around in a landscape like in the Flemish Ardennes, if you shoot with a wide angle, well, then you have a photo with 50% of meadow or acres, and then there's maybe a nice tree or a nice windmill or something in the background. But yeah, half of your photo is just an interesting foreground. So that's why, yeah, I think it's better to just focus on the essentials in the landscape, and shoot that mill or an interesting detail in the landscape, and avoid, yeah, trying to show too much where half of it is actually not adding to the picture.
Sure, absolutely. I think just to, I guess, push back or show it from another view. For me, it's less about getting everything in. That was just in a general way. For me, it's usually about getting closer and really bringing out an element into the foreground, and then having that room in the back to tell the story, as well as having a little extra depth in many occasions. I'm not always aiming to like really separate my subject as dramatically as, let's say, a 20 millimeter 1.8 would do. But yeah, the wide angle's a funny beast. I think, and I'm just sort of processing this. This is also where the whole on loose thing comes in. I think for the chat, it can be weird for people to hear a real conversation nowadays, sometimes in media. But man, I think what I'm thinking is, when I reach for my wide angle, and I think a lot of people do fall into this appeal compared to a telephoto, especially when you get, let's say around 200 millimeters. There's a certain whoosh with a wide angle that you can really draw out an impact if you pretty quickly compared to a telephoto. I mean, at 200 millimeters, you can definitely get that depth and whoosh going on. And if you don't know what I mean by whoosh, please ask. But for me, the wide angle, I always jump closer into things. I'll step
Yeah.
closer to the subject. In India, I mean, many things I stepped into, and I don't mean that in a rude way, but one of them was like trudging through mud up to my knees just to get closer to a boat with the water out, so I could get that popping in the foreground, and then have everything fall away from it. Just how I
Yeah,
see
but I
it.
think
It's not arguing with you. It's just chit chat.
no. But I think if you shoot wide, one of the things I think you have to do is trying to get closer to that foreground element, because if you don't do it, it's a foreground element that is too far off. So yeah, if I shoot wide angle, I'll also have have the natural reflex of going a little bit closer.
Of course.
Yeah,
Your work reflects it too. Yeah.
yeah, to fill the foreground with something interesting. So I think it's natural, or at least to me it feels naturally just to go in a little bit closer when I'm shooting wide angle. But if I look through the landscapes in Belgium, they're not that where you can do that type of photography. I think it's easier and like for instance Canada, where the views are unobstructed and you always have nice autumn foliage or streams or creeks or anything that you can use to make that foreground interesting. But like here in Jardin, it's usually meadows or acres. It's more difficult to find an interesting foreground to keep the image interesting from the beginning till the horizon. So
agree definitely. I mean, Canada's endless nature, so you're surrounded by it, and you can really drop in. And also the nature in the land is less flat than Belgium, so obviously you get a lot more drama through that. So do you find yourself nowadays more at the telephoto end of things, just to stay on the camera nerd side of things?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. If I would consider in percentages, nowadays I would say only 5% was shot with the 14 to 30.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's not a lot. So and I think my 24 to 70 and my 80 to 400 more or less make up for like the 59% and will be about 45 for each. Okay. So I think it's more or less the same. So I use the 24 to 70 as much as I use for 100. Yeah. But a lot of depends on the location where I am and if I'm shooting in a forest, obviously I wouldn't say I wouldn't use the telephoto. I would use it too. So I think a lot of depends on the location and the landscape itself, and maybe also the mindset that you're in at that time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Maybe you're looking for details, or maybe you're not looking for details, and then it's just also what attracts your eye and what kind of pre-visualizations of images that you have in your mind for and that will also determine how you will be looking at the landscape and also decide, and that will also determine which lens you will use. So.
That makes total sense. And just on just as a technical question, when you are, let's say, going beyond 150 millimeters, do you find yourself turning your aperture number up high? Are you closing down the aperture quite aggressively beyond f8, f11?
Yeah, f11's between f8 and f11. But yeah, so I feel that at the ends of its range, the 80 to 400 is producing. Or the images are best between f8 and f11, I think. If you go to f5.6 or maybe above f16, it just gets a little bit less sharp, and especially on those high resolution cameras which are unforgiving for sharpness. So you have to know how to use that lens, I think. So I usually, if the light allows it, I usually shoot with the tele zoom lens between f8 and f11 if I don't want to create some kind of depth of field effect. So in normal conditions, but I also pay a lot of attention to vibration, which is I think is very, very crucial when you're shooting with that kind of range, especially when you're shooting the hours. Light. I'm a sucker for fog, so I go out very early. So that's fog also means less contrast, less light. Yeah. So you have to pull everything out of the bag to get those shots sharp with like shooting at 300 or 400 meters. I usually lose the exposure delay mode.
Exposure mode.
So and I also shoot silently so that I don't have any vibrations for the shutter and stuff like that. So that helps to create, and also especially with the Z7, it has the IBIS, which also helps for those difficult shots. So just have a few settings that I use just to make sure the shot is sharp when you're shooting like I say, 300 millimeters at the shutter speed of 1 second. Then you have to be careful. Good tripod, of course. And,
Of course, don't go never go cheap on the
that's
tripod as soon as it gets serious. Yeah, and if I can cut in, man, just to clarify, because I'm still on the D800, but I'm actually looking at my upgrade now. The Z7, the IBIS, does it stop when you put it on the statif, or is it working dynamically with the
I think
statif?
I have the feeling that it still works when you're shooting on a tripod.
Okay, because well, like testing the XT4 from Fujifilm, I did a whole bunch of samples, realized that my IBIS was still on even though I was using the statif, turned it off, and it did get sharper. So I don't know on the Fujifilm side of things, but I'm curious if it recognizes the tripod and adapts.
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't even know if it's possible to switch it off. Probably it is, but I haven't seen that in the menu. But I haven't done any tests. But
because I know some systems, they detect that it's on a tripod, and then they start doing minimal smart IBIS, basically.
I don't know how the Nikon works on in that case. But I would say that I get sharper shots in more difficult conditions with the Z than with the 850. Yeah. And then I mean in shooting in those extremes, like long shutter speeds and long aperture, long focal lengths and difficult light. And then, and I prefer working with the Z now, because of all, other handy stuff that
mirrorless has its charms also, just overall focus peaking, things like that.
Yeah, and also just be able to, like, for essential focus, just to be able to zoom in the
focus assist.
Focus assist.
The little
but
square.
Just also because you can zoom in and how would you call that? You have the monitor and then you have the where you look with your eye.
The EVF, the viewfinder.
Yeah, EVF.
Again, another language. It's all cool, man.
So when you look at the viewfinder, you can just zoom in and then, just for essential focus. If there's like a lot of light, it's difficult to see the back of the screen. Just you lose contrast and it's difficult to do the manual focus. But you can look into the viewfinder and then you don't have the light falling in the viewfinder, and then you can zoom in the viewfinder and then do the focus, and it works better for me than an 850. So when when shifting or when moving to the Z system, I was very in doubt in the beginning. Coming from an 850, I had the feeling, oh no, what is that mirrorless thing going to be? And it took me quite a while to adopt, to get used to it. But now when I'm used to the Z7, I prefer working with the Z7 compared to the 850 because of the added benefits of an electronic viewfinder and stuff like the focus peaking. But the 850 also has the focus peaking, but just like the IBIS just really helps.
Of course.
I think it's also very helpful when you're shooting in difficult circumstances.
The photometry, did you say?
The what?
The what? The line skipped. I'm sorry. What helped you in low light or difficult conditions?
The silent shooting, so
Thank
that
you.
you don't have any vibrations of mirrors or
shake of any kind. A mirror slap, we say in English. Yeah. Cool. Huh. Well, mate, now you're a Nikon ambassador. So how long has that been going on? I mean, and how does that feel? I'm assuming pretty good.
Nikon, the Nikon ambassadors thing is something that just evolved out of a good relationship with Nikon. In 2012, when the 800 was released, and I just emailed, just put on my, how do you call it, dirty shoes, or just get in my guts and just emailed Nikon and just said, I'm considering a switch from Canon to Nikon. Is there something you can do? And then they made the switch a little bit easier.
Yep.
And then we kept in contact, and I started doing lectures for them on fairs and stuff like that.
Cool.
The ambassador program in Belgium started in it's 3 or 4 years ago, I think. Wow, I don't remember.
I think it's been longer.
It's longer. Yeah,
You've
it's
been with them a
5 years.
while. Yeah. But around that time?
2016, I think.
Okay,
Yeah,
so about
so
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. So they made me their first ambassador for Belgium. So that was a great honor, of course.
Really? The first in Belgium? Seriously, proficiat.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, that's also because the program was new, of course. But
Yeah,
yeah, I
but you're
just
first on the
had
list. Take it.
good contacts with Nikon. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just something that evolved out of, you know.
A good
So
relationship. That's what a
yeah,
lot of people don't realize about photography, whether it's a client or building up to a brand. I have a relationship with Fujifilm. I'm not one of their ambassadors, but it's that business side where you make connections, you build a relationship, you don't freak each other out, and
yeah.
you help. Excuse me. Sorry, you help each other, trying not to cough halfway through a sentence in a meeting. Yeah, so that's been going well. And so since 2016, you've been an ambassador. Were you already giving lectures, or was that motivated by becoming an ambassador?
Yeah, well, it just also was a natural as I started getting in touch with Nikon more often, and then they asked me for, I think, for a workshop from Nikon School.
Right.
So they have a workshop program inside Nikon, and it's called Nikon School. It's as they do workshops, and I started doing a workshop from time to time for them, and then a lecture at a fair, and then another lecture at another fair, and just, you get to know their employees. And yeah, and then it was Martin Hoosens is the professional services manager for Belgium, and he tried to he created the ambassador program in Nikon, and I had good contacts with Martin, so yeah, so that's how these things happened.
That's the way it works. Yeah. We'd all love if it was just the photos, but the reality is you have to do the work next to it around the photo.
Oh, it's a different thing.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I guess Nikon chose me because probably they consider myself or me as a decent photographer.
As they should.
I hate to say that for myself. I don't usually don't consider myself a good photographer, and I prefer not to say that.
Sure.
But they must have seen something in those images, but also the way how I interact with people and yeah, my followers and my how would you say my connection with the photography scene and yeah, I had a decent client base and a lot of followers on Facebook, so that yeah, it's the whole package that yeah, makes decide them to choose you, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. They're going to be looking at obviously your relationship and the work, but it's going to go beyond the photos into your community and in the
Yeah.
reality, especially for marketing and just what, these companies have to do to get the name out, your followers, whatever else. Were you already?
Well, and also being
Yeah,
sorry. No, go
Oh,
ahead.
I was just going to ask, were you teaching by that point in workshops? Had that already started up, or was that sort of happening hand in hand with the lectures and everything else?
No, I think I did my first workshop in 2009, and I
Okay.
actually didn't. So that's quite a while ago. I consider myself as being one of the first workshop organizers in that type of workshops, photography workshops in Belgium. I don't think there were a lot of people doing that back then.
Mm.
And yeah, actually, I didn't wasn't doing workshops at that time, but I got an email from two guys that wanted to do a private workshop with me. They said, they asked me, oh, do you do these kind of things? And I said, well, I don't do that, but I would like. And two first workshop clients, and then yeah, that's made me think, wow, yeah, maybe I have to do that more often, and so yeah, that's how it started. So I was already doing quite some workshops at the time when my connection with Nikon grew bigger. So that was afterwards.
Cool, cool. Yeah, and just out of curiosity, I can preemptively say I started my tour in 2012. Even now, and before that, certainly, I've never taken a photo workshop. I haven't had a chance or the budget or whatever other situation. When you took people around for your first workshop, was it Had you taken a workshop? Did you know what idea of sort of thing? Were you teaching? Were you just showing locations, that kind of thing?
I think I did some workshops, 2 workshops, only two actually, only did 2 workshops in my life. Well, that photography workshop at least,
Yeah.
with an English photographer, a Scottish photographer, Ian Cameron. It's a Scottish photographer, and that was, I think, in October 2009 when I did the first workshop with him. So I was already doing workshop, and I was in a difficult period at that time because, I wanted to become a professional photographer, but I was bumping into difficulties, and just I wanted that life, but you don't know how to get there, and I was in a creative down too because of all the things I was thinking about, and
It's all part of the process.
and I did and then I did a workshop with him just to find my creative self again, and then so I did 2 workshops with him, then I think another one in 2010. But actually, I was already doing the workshop thing, and if I look back, I consider myself, shouldn't have been doing workshops at that age or that time, because if I look back at my photos of 2009, then maybe, but I also learned a lot by doing workshops, because you have to look for certain information, and so giving workshops to people, helping people, also helps yourself as a photographer, I think, because you learn a lot by trying to solve problems for people, and I also I learned a lot from my clients in some sort of way.
I've had that exact same experience over 8 years of doing this. You know, in English we say the best way to learn is to teach, and I think I'm going through what you've gone through, or we've both gone through this, and maybe still are, where you don't want to look like an idiot. You don't want to rip people off. You know, if they're asking you advice and paying you for it, you want to make sure it's correct. And I mean, I get inspired by people asking me questions. It's part of why I enjoyed doing the show, and you know, is throwing the energy the other way, but also where you get a dynamic going, where you start feeding off of each other. You know, I look back at some of even the photos from the beginning of the tour, and I'm like, I can't believe I was showing those or even putting them on social media for easy publicity. But that's that point in the process. They're at their point in their process, whoever the guest is. And then you sort of end up bouncing off each other very quickly. And I think, especially in those early days, maybe, well, at least for me, I don't know for you, I was so fired up about doing something I loved. I was so fired up about the teaching side of it, which also falls into the love, and just a chance at, you know, the dream that I think a lot of photographers have of one way or another, I get to do photography for a living, that it just pushed it all forward. And it continues to do that to me today, you know, especially the last year. I mean, I did 5% business compared to a normal year for tours. Luckily, other things happened, and I found ways to keep myself busy, and you too with your book and everything else. But can't you, I just can't wait to have like people in front of me, whether they know exactly what they're doing or whether they know nothing with a smartphone, and just say, let's go see what happens. Let's see what we get out of this time together and where we can both grow. Are you feeling the same?
Yeah. Well, that's what I said before, that that I definitely learned a lot by doing those workshops, and that means by doing research, but also somebody asks you a question and you don't exactly know the answer to that setting, and then you just come home and you go look for a solution, and that's how you learn yourself, by clients asking you something, and also sometimes you also look, because they shoot when, especially on a photo trip, so when we're abroad and when we have several days together, and then people just shoot them, and you see, well, that composition was one I wouldn't have considered, but it works. So, and just that's also learning, and so
feeding off each other. Yeah. And you're doing the exact same thing to them. I don't know how you show photos. I'm going to guess like you take a couple shots and then show them the results off camera, something like that.
Yeah, it depends. I usually have a lot of sample photos with me, but I tend to show those less often nowadays because, um, yeah, people are too fixed with those shots, and then you get exact copies. While
Hmm.
I want to, yeah, to show their own or to do yeah to
Their
do
own thing.
their approach to the situation and their own solution for the composition and so I show some sample photos, but because yeah, you have to do your explanation too, and you have to tell well, I'll look for this and these things in the landscape and pay attention to this and that. But yeah, I have the feeling that if you show too many samples of your own, that they're too fixed with what they've seen, and then while it's better to be open-minded to a location and try to yeah to find your own solution or your
Yeah.
own approach. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
your own
try to
interpretation.
find the weight somewhere and or the balance between yeah showing my images and trying to make them or trying to educate them, but also trying to point out how important it is to find your own voice and your own. Yeah. So that's always difficult to find a balance.
Good. Well, then you're. I think we're again running in parallel and same thinking here because from the first day, I used an iPad and loaded up some photos. Especially now, Lightroom Mobile makes that super easy. And I feel that too, where I'm like showing them, but I always emphasize, hey, copy it out if you want to. If you really like it, go ahead. I'm not going to complain. I'm here to inspire you, and if that's how your process goes, go for it. But always try and push them towards getting their own interpretation. The samples are so useful just to be, it's like singing a song or explaining a song or just playing the song. You play the song, it's so much easier than going, and then it goes duck, 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 duck. So you have the photo in front of you. You can say, okay, if we're going to talk apertures in this situation, da, 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 da. But at the end of the day, you have to push them towards their own thing. It, man, I can
But
see, just not at all to compare, like to use the point that we're running in parallels, but I can see why you're getting very good reviews as a workshop leader because you sound like you're really keeping your head open and not trying to push them down this tunnel of only your vision.
oh no, and I think it's important. It's something I realized. Yeah, I think I realize even more nowadays than I used to realize that in the beginning of my workshop career. If
Mm,
yeah. But yeah, what you were saying that yeah that if they want to copy it, that can be part of their creative process, and that is thing I think is something that yeah, shouldn't be underestimated. I recently did a webinar
mm,
where I more or less demonstrated my career, like how I started out, and then there was a time where I went to hotspots and copied shots, but
yep.
that's also part of learning.
Yeah.
That's also part of you're in the same position as a photographer before you, and yeah, you need to need to solve or you see his composition, and then you see the real how it looks real life, and then you also learn by okay, so he didn't show that or he didn't incorporate that into his composition. So that's all also part of learning and being there and trying to yeah to photograph the scene that scene in the same way helps you to yeah helps you learning, but also helps you to yeah how would I say, it's difficult for me to explain. How would I say that?
To evolve a little bit.
Yeah, well, to involve, and also yeah, you see the difficulties that photographer might have had, and you're faced with the same difficulties, and then you try yeah you see what solution he used to cover that difficulty. So yeah, you also learn by using those things. And that's more or less what I want to say.
For sure, man. No, that makes sense. And hey, you're doing it in second language with a guy who bounces all over the place. You're doing fantastic. No, this is great, and this is also good therapy for me because sometimes as doing the workshop thing, I get my doubts, my wonders, and everything else. So this is helping process stuff on my side. That's what I get out of these episodes. I get some phototherapy for myself.
Yeah, I think we all need that from time to time, and some find it therapy. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just. I think it's an ongoing thing with photographers that they have time when they feel good and they feel creatively, and then you have times where you feel what I'm doing, it's just I haven't done anything good in the last few months. So then you're in a great creative dip, and then you get out of it, and then you go in another one. So at least it's for me, and you start doubting yourself. But I think it's even in any creative job or yeah, I think it's not only in photography. It's just for all creative people. I think they go through shifts where they feel creative, and then sometimes they feel that they're not doing anything right. So.
Yeah, I think that's very common, especially the confidence side of things. The amount of genius photographers I've heard say my work is terrible, all of it is terrible. It's just way too high.
It's just I think the most important thing is not to get into the negative spiral too much, because then it can really get you stuck. But just try to go out again and yeah, push yourself to just go out shooting with not too many not expecting too much, and then before you know you're back in your creative spiral again just by going out. So I have that a lot. I have that a few times every year, I think. So it goes up and down, and now I'm in a creative period, but I have been in a creative down too just before that. So it's usually when I'm too much behind the computer and haven't been out a lot, then you get those negative spiral, and then just by going out a few times, and then suddenly you're back into your swing or how your
The
mood or
rhythm.
how you
Yeah.
have to your swirl or something like that, and then you
Uh-huh.
just want to go out more and more, and just it helps to yeah to get better creatively. So yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I was also talking about in the beginning, to find that balance between the business part and the creative part. There's also part of what I was just saying is also part of that aspect, I think. Yeah.
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 Especially as it gets serious. The amount of professional photographers I've seen who can barely pick up a camera on their own time because they get stressed just even thinking about an aperture or even pressing a button. I mean, I don't know about you, men, but I have trouble taking photos on holiday outside of like the whole, photography. I'll forget to take photos of the wife. We don't have a kid, so that's not a
Oh,
problem, but
I
tell
I
me.
have luckily I have a wife that takes a lot of photos of my daughter, because I don't, and I hate it if people ask me doing photos for some, because I don't like to do that. It's just
This is your time.
yeah, so I prefer if they don't ask. Yeah, so no, I don't take a lot of photos on holidays, or when I'm for instance, if I'm on a photo trip for a few days, and then yeah, or like for instance Iceland, then my wife always asks you, yeah, just take some photos about yeah the hotel, or I don't know what, or the car, or yeah, but I usually just have landscape shots and
Yeah.
no not a single photo of myself, not just the landscape. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's also a common thread I notice. I guess the smartphone makes it a little easier, but it's not even about the size of the
uh,
camera. It's just no.
I don't do that. No, I don't use my cell phone camera a lot, actually.
Oh, you
I
should.
just no, I don't. I shoot it to show examples on a workshop, for instance, quickly, or to make an in the field photo for social media. But for myself, I don't do a lot of photography with my smartphone.
That's because you're still using it for work. You're still thinking like a photographer. You got to think like a human being, and also like a photographer. This is what I do to pros when I find they're stuck. I take away their camera gear for 20 minutes and force them to use their smartphone because they're over obsessing with the gear, they're lost in it. Even on a more reasonable level, it just becomes too much part of the process. It's to me, and it's another thing I do personally for therapy and recommend. I play with an instant film camera. Just
Mm.
strip away everything, get back to like the fun, the creativity, the joie de vivre around it. If you don't mind me recommending, play with your phone a little bit, man. Just not
Yeah,
even,
no.
and don't use it for social media,
But
just for you.
would you would you consider? I don't think I um, well, the technical aspect, I don't think that's well, that creates a kind of border for me. I think because the technical aspect just, yeah, you don't have to think a lot about the technical part. It's just
Oh,
you play with the
yeah,
settings. Yeah.
yeah. I don't
So
mean it in that way,
I
but
wouldn't
continue.
consider the technical part being the thing that avoids me of being creatively. I think it's yeah, everything that's happening around me that yeah prevents me from being creative,
Huh?
business wise or yeah, we're also doing renovations on our house and stuff like that. Yeah,
Life
just keeps me
stuff.
busy and makes me yeah makes me or yeah makes me less creative. So
I
yeah.
understand. We're about to tear out our bedroom window with a veranda and a plastic roof over top, so I understand stress. But man, if you don't mind me saying, and this is just personal reflection, I could be totally wrong and everyone's different. Sometimes you might be picking up the weight of the business when you're picking up your big camera. It's not even the
Yeah,
technical challenge, it's just how much association comes with it. I also find, even on a personal level, when I take out, especially like my D800 compared to my smaller mirrorless, I I feel like I have to get a winner. Not always.
yeah,
I keep it loose, but you're like, okay, well, I've gone 3 kilometers out from the hotel. It's 6 in the morning. I'm with my full frame. I better damn well get a killer, and
yeah.
that can come
That's the
into it too
creative
much.
pressure. Yeah, that's the creative pressure that you put on your own. Yeah,
Precisely.
I have that too. Yeah, it's better nowadays because I also realize or I can cope with the days that I don't produce better than I used to be able to cope with it. Yeah. So
Hmm.
when in the early days when I had bad days that didn't produce any images that could put me into a negative spiral, nowadays it's just like it was nothing. There will be another day, and yeah, I try to it doesn't always I don't always succeed on convincing myself that there will be another day. Sometimes again still get can be a little bit down if something didn't turn out
So you're
how I
human. Oh my god.
but yeah, I think most of the times I don't allow to yeah to put too much pressure on myself and just okay, we'll do it another day, and there will be another foggy morning or another sunny morning, or I don't know what.
It's also worth remembering too that in Belgium the weather can change in 10 minutes and not always for the better. Sometimes you hang out for an hour, you go like, "Oh, it's happening," and then it goes, "No, no, it's not happening. It's worse than that." So you have to let go of that stuff. It again. I think it's part of the weight. Sometimes we pick up with the heavier equipment just by a built-in association. It ends up being too serious,
Yeah,
too much down the tunnel.
but and the other way, if we wouldn't take it seriously, probably it wouldn't allow us to do what we're doing right now.
True.
So yeah, it's also necessary to take it seriously because I have a lot of, I think I encounter with a lot of people that kind of would want to trade lives with me to have the professional running and doing photography. As some people don't realize that yeah it's also a lot of commitment and a lot of just go for it, not 100% but like 200,000%, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah it's not always easy, and yeah you come into those creative days, you have to get out, and there's the business aspect. So yeah it's yeah a lot of people want that life, but I don't know if everybody would be able to to run that life because yeah they realize that it's also a lot of yeah
Work,
you just
boring
you
work. Yeah.
have to do a lot of work for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they might be able to take the photos. I mean, that, let's be honest, at the end of the day, if you apply yourself, isn't rocket science. You can do a couple of years of hardcore study and be pretty much up to speed on a lot. But getting your accounting right, especially in Belgium, uh, which I want to talk about just a little bit if you feel okay with that. But, just having a haircut for the workshop, little things like that. Less of a worry as we get older, of course.
I don't have the problem. I do the haircut myself.
Yeah.
This is my Corona capsule, my Corona haircut. Has
That's
been
why
like
we have
this.
video, man, so people can get that.
It has been like this for quite a few years.
Yeah, well, that's the joy of running a
Actually,
Belgian
this
business.
happened because I was filming myself and I saw like a little spot here and thought, "Oh, I can't do it anymore." So I went to the hairdresser and I said, "Well, just take it off."
You did the right thing. Yeah. No, when that circle comes in, it's just better to go all
Well,
or
actually, by
nothing.
filming myself, by doing something with video and photography, that I noticed, oh, what's that? Okay, we're going for cut.
Cool. Well, man, if you don't mind, I mean, we can totally skip over it. It's not the most exciting topic, but I'm a little curious as a fellow Belgian business owner. How do you feel doing business in Belgium? I mean, for those who are outside Belgium listening in, we pay high taxes here. I think you can agree. We also have a good government, but the efficiency always isn't always so great. And I think just without getting into picking apart the country, which has many beautiful things, even on administration, um, it the paperwork gets heavy, very very heavy sometimes.
Yeah,
How do you cope with that on the business end of things? Do you have a partner helping you?
I haven't. Yeah, for me it has been like this. Yeah, since I started out, so I don't have any experiences abroad, so I don't know how much easier it is in Canada, for example. So
Hmm.
I'm kind of used to being it like this. Um, and I have an accountant, of course, that takes that does a part of, or at least does the most of the work. He does the taxing and how do you say it, the submitting the tax to the government and stuff like that.
The crap. The
Yeah,
crap.
so
Yeah.
it's just more or less collecting what is coming in, collecting the invoices that are going out, and then just give it to them, to him, and just arranging it a little bit. But so yeah, I don't consider that as the biggest problem. No. So and actually, I don't mind that part. I yeah, I don't hate the accounting part. That's just part of the business, and I don't mind creating invoices or stuff like that. It's just yeah.
Did you build a bit of a system, like a template, and then you just fill in the details, ba ba boom, out to the cloud?
I use an online accounting software,
Also an
so
option.
it's very easy to use and just allows me to do what it's still a small business, so it's not very difficult, the accounting. So it's just a simple accounting program, and it does what it has to do for me. So
Okay, so you're managing there.
yeah, I don't have a lot of problems with the accounting, I think, and maybe Belgium is a little bit more complicated, but yeah, like I said before, I don't have any experience outside of Belgium, so I remember that I went doing a workshop in Canada, for example, and that we had to have a lot of permits to be able to take a group in Banff and Jasper. So actually,
Oh
it was
yeah.
a lot. So yeah,
Cool.
we don't have to do that in Belgium, at least. So yeah, I wouldn't consider Belgium as the most difficult country for accounting, but maybe that's because I don't have experience anywhere
No,
else.
it's all good. It's just something that I've noticed comes up to a lot of people. My first proper business was in Belgium, so I have about the same reference as you. But yeah, it just seems sometimes that it gets a little bit heavy on the paperwork at least. But on the other side of things, also to give some positive love to Belgium, I mean, we have a great standard of living here. We do pay higher taxes, but we pay next to nothing for school, medical, all that stuff. And
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but if you fill out your paperwork right, you get some very nice deductions on these expensive camera pieces. So
Yeah,
there's pros and cons everywhere. And like you said, Canada has its share of paperwork too.
yeah. Well, I remember all those pyramids we had to have, and it was. I would say it was more difficult than the accounting that I had to do a lot of. And then, just to get stuff arranged, it wasn't easy.
Do you have a fixer on the other side? Do you have somebody that you're working with?
well, I work with a travel company, and so they arrange everything. But then, yeah, they wanted to know what location we were going to visit, and then I said, well, we're going to visit Banff and Jasper. But then I had to say no, which exact location in those national parks, and I had that like to say familiar lakes and I don't know, stuff like that. And then so it had to be detailed. But I'm a photo tour leader. Those locations are not fixed yet. It's just like if the weather is different, I go to another location, and it might be something that is not on the list. So it was difficult to get that arranged, and also with the hotels to be able to get packed lunches and stuff like that. It's just like they weren't used to doing those things like that. Well, you welcome like a few million people every year that come to visit the Banff and Jasper, and you haven't heard of packed lunches. Oh my God! So, yeah.
That's not good. Excuse me.
No. So it took a lot of communication with the hotels and the parks Canada to get everything set up to be able to run a photo tour there.
Well, on behalf of Canada, I would have to say sorry because that's our national motto.
So, no, well, just saying that, yeah, well, I considered my accounting part that was easier than the whole paperwork we had to go through just to run a 2-week workshop in Canada.
That's reassuring to hear in many ways, man. It reminds me that's not just Belgium. Huh. You know, one thing I wanted to ask you, you are a very dedicated nature and landscape photographer, I notice. It's very consistent in your work. I'm totally changing channels here, but I hope it makes sense. You do you play around with like street photography? Do you do other things outside of nature and landscape? Are you really so in love with that view that you're good?
Yeah, well, yeah, I started out into photography is because I was interested in nature, so that's always has been very important to me, and
Of course.
it's obvious that most of my work is in nature, but I think the furthest I went off that subject is when shooting a project for the West Flanders for the government. Was a project for the World War One remembrance, or
The 100-year remembrance of World War
yeah.
One. Yeah.
So so that was shooting. There was also landscape work, but also was trees and monuments and stuff like that. So it was still more or less, there was a landscape aspect in it, but I think we'd say that's about the furthest I went away from what is considered nature photography or landscape photography. So that type of subject. And yeah, I have been contacted with clients that want me to shoot, for instance, how would you say that in English? Immobilien,
Real estate.
real estate,
Yeah.
but I'm not interested in doing that, or shooting for a garden architect, for example.
Yeah.
I've been contacted by quite a few of them. Yeah, that's not really what I love to do. And maybe in my beginnings, when I was starting the business, I probably would have said yes to that, because yeah, you just need to grow and you have to earn your income. But now it's more comfortable, so you can be a little bit more picky about what clients you work for. So I usually try to keep my subjects around landscape and nature, because that's just what I like to do. And yeah, for instance, I wouldn't like to shoot people. It's not just nothing I'd like to do. I probably wouldn't be good in it too, because yeah, it's just I don't like that.
It's
So
outside your comfort zone.
yeah, it's out of my comfort zone.
That's
Yeah.
fine, but yeah.
I'm in the position now, in the luxury position, that I can choose a little bit on what work I accept and what work I prefer not to do, because it's a little bit out of my comfort zone. Which is not always bad. It's maybe sometimes it's good to step out of your comfort zone. But yeah, for me, the nature part and just being out is an important aspect of my career, of my work. So I stick to that. Yeah.
Fair.
because I'm an ITer from education, so I was a web developer, so I studied web development. I did that for a few years,
Ah,
and
that
I always
explains why
say,
your website is so beautiful.
yeah, well, I didn't build it myself. I've been out
No.
business.
Well, it
My
worked.
previous websites.
Don't let me
I made
distract with websites.
my previous websites. I made them myself, but now it's just too long, and the business is just, or the IT is just developing constantly, and
Mm.
yeah, I'm not up to date anymore. So
So not your
uh,
comfort zone anymore there either.
no. Well, I like programming. I still love. I like the programming part because sometimes I have like my image library, for example, is something I built myself, which is synchronizing with my Lightroom library through.
Really?
So that's something I program myself, and doing that, I like doing that. So I
Yeah.
still like the programming part. I wouldn't say I want to do that full time, but yeah, I can. If, for instance, I'm making that library connection or that connection with Lightroom, and then just uploading images to a website, and then just generate an online library actually based on the Lightroom library. Yeah, I found it fun to do. So
Well, it's
that's
pretty damn
still
cool, so it should be, yeah.
programming code is probably not up to date, but it works, and it's fine because it's just for me. It's not for a client, and it
Yeah.
works yeah, like it should. So that's fine.
But that's your enjoyment zone too.
Yeah, still like the program. You have to think, and it's math, and I'm okay in math, and so yeah.
Do you,
And
Bart, do you
yeah,
mind if I ask you a personal question?
yeah, go ahead.
Do you think you're an extrovert or an introvert? Or put another way, do you think you're a very social person, or you enjoy your own time, maybe with family and small group of friends?
Mm, if I'm in a group of friends, I'm probably pretty outgoing, actually. Yeah,
Okay.
but with new people that I don't know, I will be a little bit. I will hold back a little bit, I think, because I don't know those people. We have to get to know each other first, I think. But
Hmm.
once I'm comfortable with people, yeah, I'm really extrovert and pretty outgoing. Yeah.
Cool.
So
I just ask because as I notice with landscape and nature photography, there's still there's how do I put this? Right now, I'm going through a whole thing, partly through the show, of trying to figure out the characteristics of a photographer. I'm not talking gear, I'm talking like obsession with gear or taking gear seriously. And I notice with nature landscape, and I feel it myself as an introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert, take your pick, that with nature and landscape, I find it's more a crowd that stays that likes small groups more than large crowds. That likes being with friends more than
oh,
with a bunch of
no,
strangers. But also, we were talking about Belgian culture, so then that's another
yeah.
dynamic in the mix, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, no, I wouldn't consider myself as the nature guy that just doesn't come out of his how do you call it, camouflage tent and just wants to be there. No, 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 definitely not. I also have yeah, there's a complete other side of me too. But and I think if the business we're running, if we would be introvert, it just wouldn't work because you have to connect with people, you have to talk to people. I don't find it difficult to talk to. I might be a little bit nervous, but I don't find it difficult to talk to or give a large lecture to a lot of people. So yeah, that's part of the game. And if I wouldn't be introvert, I wouldn't be doing that well, and that would also have effect on my success. So I must be doing something right in connection with people. Otherwise, I think I wouldn't have come to this point. Yeah, because running workshops, people they look for knowledge, but they also look for somebody they can connect with, and I think that's even more important nowadays. So they're not looking for they want to learn, but they also want a good day out and they want to have fun. And if I would be an introvert, I don't think my workshops would be that successful. So, but to new people for business people, I will be a little bit held back first, just to get to know each other, and then and then yeah, we'll see how it evolves. And if we have a good connection, I can be quite extrovert actually. If I'm around friends, I'm usually the one that's always chatting and it's quite noisy. And yeah,
Oh, right
if
on.
if I see my family, it's all my nephews and nieces. Oh, Uncle Bart, and then so I
All
don't
bets
think
are
I'm
off.
because I'm just acting silly and playing with them. So yeah, I don't consider myself introvert, I think.
Awesome. No, it's an unusual question. I appreciate you expanding on it, man. Especially we've never met before today, and even though we're under 5 kilometers apart from each other, doing this over Skype. Yeah, and also it was the second random question in a row, so very well handled. Nice work. I'm a little floaty today. Like I mentioned, I have a week with the Fujifilm equipment, so part of part of my brain is spinning back here on another thing. Well handled, dude. You're doing great. Well, Bart, I could ask you 100 other questions, but I don't want to keep all your time, especially even now with lockdowns and whatever. You still have family and such to get to. Um, Anything else you want to talk about? I have one more question that I ask every guest, but did I miss something? I
Oh,
could ask you about the lecturing.
there's a lot to talk about, but you can go along with your question. Yeah,
Cool.
just yeah.
Cool. Well, you're my guest, man. We have all the time in the world as far as I see it. I don't want to cut
Oh
you
yeah,
off.
we can keep on talking about gear and photography, and yeah, I think we can talk for 2 days about yeah. There's so much to tell. You have to end up
Yeah.
somewhere.
That's
Oh, probably a lot of people that are still listening already. Will,
Well, they shouldn't be, man, because your work is awesome. So I hope this helps people understand a little more of, what goes on behind the camera, so you get the results from the camera. It's why I call the show "This Photo Life." It's photography and life. That's what makes a great image. It's not just photography. You have to be
no,
out there living a life, running through fields and getting up at 6 a.m. to see that breathtaking fog to get a shot to match, huh?
yeah. Well, it's definitely. I think photography is. I was doing that. I was saying that in my last webinar I did, and yeah, that to find your own style and vision has nothing to do with equipment. It has everything to do with yourself as a person, with where you come from, where you grew up, your vision on life, your vision on the world, your connection with other people. That's the things that make you a person, and that's you need to translate that into your photo, and that's when
Yeah.
yeah, more or less have developed your own vision and your own style, and that you're able to yeah to show something about yourself through your photos. Yeah. So it has everything to do with people and not a lot about equipment. They help us to do it, of course. Equipment allows us to do it, but yeah, it's the person, not the camera itself.
It's not the car, it's the driver. That's the line I always use, and you're welcome to borrow it.
But you were going to ask.
I was, yeah. I'll let you off the hook for the afternoon, and we can wrap this up at least on the recording. Well, mate, first, before I do this, I have to give you some cred because I think it's due also, and this is why I wanted you on the show, as well as why I want people to check out your work. I've been listening. Well, I've been seeing your work in the background over the last 9 years of doing Photo Tour Bruges. You had actually started doing a workshop before I opened up my daily tour thing, so there's that. But overall, I've just really enjoyed your work, so I want to give you that kudos on air and remind people that your work kicks ass and they got to check it out. I also got to say, as an instructor, from someone who hears all the complainers in Bruges, because it's a bit of a national sport in our village, that I never hear anything shitty about you, man. So very good work. In fact, lots of compliments from people who have taken the workshop.
Uh,
So I'm just going to squeeze that in, and everybody can see you awkwardly take it on screen if they're watching on YouTube. Anything to say
but
to that?
you had did you have one last question or
Yeah, I did. I just wanted to throw some compliments your way, man. You deserve them.
oh, you're
Yeah,
welcome.
please. No, the last question that I have for you, Bart, is the first question I ask people when they join me as Photo Tour Bruges, and the last question I like to ask my guests when they join me on this Photo Life. It is a simple one. It is an open one. Answer any way you want. And it's simply, Bart, how do you feel about your photography?
um Difficult question. That's why you kept that one as the last one.
Bingo.
um photography. I think I explain it to the people that come to my workshop that I consider myself as being or as climbing a big step or a long ladder, and I want to reach the top. I don't know how high on the ladder I am for the moment, and I don't know if I will reach the top. But so it's a constant, trying a constant progress of trying to get better and trying to learn and trying to take the next step on the ladder but I don't know when the step is, and I don't know how high I will get. It just but I think that's something that a lot of photographers more or less feel. I think, or we're just trying to evolve and try to get better, and that's part of being creative, I think. No, so if I look back, I would say, I found a much more peace in my photography. So meaning that my business is running well. I see progress in my work. I'm sometimes very happy with what I do. I sometimes have the feeling that I want to do even better. I don't know if will be able to get better, because I sometimes also have a feeling that I don't know how much steps I will be able to take. We'll see, but I'm just satisfied with what I'm doing now, and I'll see how that keeps on evolving. Definitely, I'm very happy that I succeeded in it's more or less chasing my dreams and following my dreams, and it's I think it's very important in life to be able to do what you love, but it's not possible for everyone. So I'm very happy that I have a life like this, and we'll see how this will evolve in the future. But so I can say now that I'm happy with not only photography, that's everything that's around it too, and my daughter and my wife, and but they're also part of me, and they're also since they're part of me, they're also part of my work. So does that make sense?
Absolutely, man. It's an open question.
About the person behind the camera. So, the person behind the camera is also made by his family around him and by his friends. So I think if I would say if I need to conclude it in one sentence or something, that I'm happy where I am for the moment, and that I hope I'll to become better and grow bigger, if that's the right word I could use, in the future, and we'll see how it evolves. But there's a lot of less frustration and less difficulties than I had in my early days. That's for sure. I'm more at ease now. I found some kind of peace inside of me, not having that constant pressure of running business and being creative, and just I go a little bit more with the flow.
Good.
And we'll see where that takes me.
Cool. That's beautiful. There is no wrong answer to this. It can be I feel great, or it can be anything in between, including what you threw out there. Perfect. Right. Perfect. Bart, you look nervous, and you shouldn't. You've been a fantastic guest, especially with my focus skipping around a little bit this afternoon. I assume people can find you at your website and Instagram and all that kind of thing. Please mention it for the record and let everyone know.
Oh, my website. Well, my website, you can use that one to get to the social media things. So my website is www.bartheirweg.com. So it's a Spanish name, just my first and last name .com.
Awesome. And I'll make sure there's a link in the description so people don't have to worry about anything there. Bart.
Yeah, and
thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Very welcome. Yeah, and good luck with all your work and all the things you're doing, and maybe we'll meet somewhere in Bruges someday.
I insist on it. I would be
in normal years when everything is running back normal. Then probably our roads will cross sometime someday.
I'd like that, man. You're less than 5 kilometers away, and I should have contacted you years ago when I started up the photo tour to say hi, neighbor. Awesome. Take care,
Right.
Bart. Thanks again.
Bye.
Yo. All right, there you have it. My chit chat with Bart Heirweg, landscape photographer extraordinaire and fine fella, and my neighbor in Bruges, who I've gotten to know just a little bit more. And I really recommend you check out his work. He does fine stuff, and that's all via bartheirweg.com, as you heard and can see in the description. And we didn't even get a chance to chat about it, and I've got the browser window right in front of me so that I can make sure to mention properly that Bart did a book last year that he didn't even ask me to mention, but I've seen it. I bought it as a gift for a friend of the show, Ian, and it's well worth checking out if you're in Belgium or just want to see some beautiful photos of Belgium. And that is De mooiste fotolocaties van België in the local language, which is, of course, the most beautiful photo locations in Belgium in the English way. It's available here, there, everywhere, including Bart's website. So feel free to check it out. As I said, I have had a copy in my hands in the gifting way, and I did not regret that gifting of Bart's book. So free little plug for Bart because he's doing such awesome work. And hey, come on, he put up an hour and a half of me chit-chatting away over his wonderful information and sharing of his story. Really appreciate it, Bart. Welcome on the show anytime. Definitely see you for that beer in Bruges. All right, boys and girls, with that having been said and trying to keep it brief towards the end of the show, I'm just going to say how happy I am that Photo Feeling exists as a podcast properly in this rebrand from This Photo Life that we have done for over 50 episodes. You might be seeing it on your podcast reader or in the titles of these episodes if you're checking us out beyond the podcast side of things, because of course we like to post our videos on youtube.com/Andy McPhoto. And that Photo Feeling is the new name, vibe, and thing you should see all over the place, especially over time as everything updates and all those little cracks get filled on the rebranding process. As I mentioned too in previous episode or otherwise, it's all sort of simplifying things and not just a rebrand of what's going on, but also just a bit of a refresh of what's going on. I'm still a one-man team with no budget, so don't expect too much on the production. I gotta admit, I'm sorry. I don't have a full degree in video editing and all that stuff. So, take it as it comes. And that's why the podcast comes out on a Wednesday or Thursday, depending on my time and my CPU compiling all this. But look forward to more of the same with some refinements, with some additions, with some slight little changes and integrations to the other things I do. That Photo Feeling is also now the name of my live Sunday video live stream over on youtube.com/Andy McPhoto and facebook.com/Andy McPhoto. And that's not quite like the podcast where it's interviews or just chit-chat monologues from me, depending on the season and the episode, but actually more of a recap of my last week in Bruges, as well as some photo tutorials, some thoughts, some tips and tricks, and all that kind of thing. That's no longer called Andy's Photo Show. It's now purely that Photo Feeling all the way through, from the podcast to the live show. And it also includes the Clubhouse group that I'm running 5 days a week now, because I've been on Clubhouse for a couple months and I've seen a beautiful photography community there, as well as a just really nice, simple, straightforward way of doing social media by talking and listening and all these, pure ways of communicating beyond texting and GIFs and everything else that I love, but gets in the way of a good chit-chat. So that's happening over at That Photo Feeling on Clubhouse. There's a link in the description. And also, frankly, you can find all this through thatphotofeeling.com. I'm pointing at it if you're watching the video over here on YouTube. Type that into your address. You'll be taken over to my website, andymcsweeney.com, but specifically for all these efforts as That Photo Feeling, where I share my photo knowledge, try and get some people around to chit-chat about their photo knowledge, stories, times good and bad, and everything in between. One of the things I love most about photography is community. Friends have had Photo Tour Bruges for 9 years. I've helped over 2,000 people with their photography, whether they be local or visiting to our fine city. And like talking with Bart and being able to connect with my neighbor just over the road. Community is something that brings us together, and it makes us stronger. And if done right, there's just victory for everyone, whether it's business, pleasure, photos, or otherwise. That's what I got, and we'll catch you next Wednesday or Thursday on all the major podcast networks as That Photo Feeling, and same over on YouTube and Facebook. You heard the names, links, and all that, and it's in the description. And with that said, I guess I can say I'm Andy McSweeney of Andy McSweeney Photography, Photo Tour Bruges, and That Photo Feeling. Thanks so much for listening. Catch you next week, and you know what to do from this point. Get out there and get shooting. See ya.